Welcome back to another week of possible spoilers ahead. As always, since we will be talking about the last week of wrestling, and while I may not be spoiling anything for you, as the name suggests, there could be possible spoilers ahead. With that said, as always, this week we've got something to talk about. One of the most common questions that I see posted on all the forums throughout the internet wrestling community is, what does Impact need to do to get to the next level? I will regularly answer these posts and questions with a simple one-word answer: nothing. Why? Because Impact Wrestling currently is doing better than they have ever done. I'm aware of just how bold of a statement that is. I know there are a lot of you already fuming and thinking I have to be absolutely ridiculous for thinking this, let alone saying it. But first, let me start with my background with Impact. With the exception of the first few months of the weekly pay-per-views that were not available here in Canada, and then from the Grand Championship era until this time last year, with those exceptions, I have watched Impact every week. I know you all have multiple examples queued up to prove me wrong, but let me talk about these points first, because as an Impact Wrestling fan, I am well aware of all of them. Ratings. Ratings, ratings, ratings. Wrestling fans are obsessed with using the United States viewership numbers to determine the level a promotion is. Do they matter? To some degree, yes. But we have to remember something. Those are US numbers, so the only people they matter to are the network and the advertisers. Why do ratings matter to a network? First, because of a previously mentioned thing about advertisers, as that is their bread and butter for a network. But also to know where shows rank on their network, to know who to focus the attention to, like who to advertise on what shows and whatnot. Now, 2 million viewers on Fox is good, but not great. And less than a third of what the shows get on Fox at 6 to 7 million viewers. You gotta think that's a third of what these top shows are getting. Scripted shows on the USA Network that gets numbers at and below Raw's current numbers tend to get canceled. Now, obviously, their strong partnership is a factor in their position. Networks almost always have expectations. This is why AEW is sitting pretty, because their ratings were already better than what were expected by TNT, and with NXT out of the way, they are able to now exceed those expectations for TNT. A network doesn't get a wrestling show because they want to beat another network's wrestling show. That is how wrestling fans think, not global media companies. They pick up a wrestling show because they feel it can add something to the portfolio, to the advertisers. That's it. When it comes to Impact, first, they are not only one, if not the top viewed show on most of Anthem's shows that it airs on, like Access and the Fight Network. But they are owned by the same company that owns their network. So getting 10% of what Raw gets doesn't matter. If you watch shows only based on what ratings they are getting, you are doing it wrong. Impact has been on Fox Sports Net, YouTube, BitTorrent, Spike, Pop, Destination America, and now Access. They have never had the security in their show's home like they do today. This allows for Impact to do a lot of things they wouldn't be able to do in previous years. Which brings us to the next point. Creative. People like to talk about how garbage the Impact product is right now, or mud show, or whatever insult Corny is using this week. Let's get one thing straight. If we looked hard enough, we would find fault in every single show out there today. Some may find more fault in one show compared to others. And that comes down to the magic phrase of the week: personal preference. Anyone who has ever asked me if they should watch Impact Wrestling will tell you all the exact same thing. And that is that I have told them that is not for everyone. I mean that. And that is not a put down. It just means they try a different style of storytelling. Not wrong or bad, but different. Yes, Wrestle House was weird at times, but that is the charm of it. Just as Swingers Palace is. The Diener compound. Until the Broken Universe began, Impact was more worried about trying to be or beat WWE than to try things like those things that we just mentioned. When you're trying to be number one and beat your competition, you are generally too afraid to take the big of risks that are needed. How many creative changes did TNA have that they had to go through in that time? You had Cornette, you had Russo, you had Jarrett, Gilberti, Bischoff, Carter, Hogan, Corgan, Pritchard. The list goes on and on. D'Amore and Callis are from a time at the beginning of TNA, as well as having great minds, and now have the trust of ownership that they allows them to take the risk like never before while honoring what has come before them. And because of the creative continuity, they have been able to pay off these wacky bits. Wrestle House was still telling or having stories being resolved 6 months later. Very few companies are able to continue a story that long and have it keep paying off in different ways and let it evolve. So let's start and stop. So the start and stop booking that they had is gone. And they now have faith in their position and ideas, so they don't have to do that stop and start booking like before. Sure, we've had a future Hall of Fame caliber roster for about 10 years before, but that will bring me to the next point. The wrestling. Even with the attempt to be the reborn NWA with dying WCW creative for the first few months of their existence, they still had amazing wrestlers with the X Division putting on amazing matches. But try to tell me when they didn't have great wrestling. Have you watched an Impact Plus special or pay-per-view in the last year that didn't have at least 2 great matches on it that made the show worth the money you paid? There was not one bad match, in my opinion, on Rebellion, with every match being good or better. That's hard for any company to pull off in 2021. Is there some bad? Yeah, for sure. But again, show me any company that doesn't have a fault or some faults in a match here and there. No one can be a big enough mark for New Japan Pro Wrestling to tell me that they've never had a bad match. Did we have Daniels versus Joe versus Styles at one point? Yeah, of course. But Impact has always had the talent to put on 5-star matches. It just depends on who is watching the match, whether they get them or not. Go watch the story that Sami Callihan and Trey Miguel told in their match at Rebellion. You want P.D. Williams, Jay Lethal, and Austin Aries? Well, now you've got Ace Austin, TJP, and Josh Alexander. Let's not forget the veterans on the roster who are actually there to help the younger talent. Remember when we had those X Division guys lighting it up? Well, we had veterans. We had a lot of veterans that, at face value, appeared to come in for more of a paycheck than helping the younger talent back then. Thankfully, it is that younger talent from then that is now being the veterans, giving this generation such a bigger advantage over the generation Sabin, EY, and James Storm came from. While you may say there are times when TNA, Impact, whatever, was better because of these one reason or the other, I just show why across the board they are in the best position they have been in and have the brightest future at this point. They are partnered with a promotion loaded with talent, a company whose champion is currently also the champion for Impact. Regardless of what fans think about this relationship, every episode that Kenny Omega, arguably one of the biggest names in professional wrestling today, is on Impact, it is a benefit to Impact. We are supposed to hate him. We are supposed to hate his character. People said they didn't want him to win the titles because it would take the belt away. Those people have now been proven wrong. So in the end, it comes down to one thing. Say it with me. Personal preference. Yes, you may not like Impact Wrestling right now compared to where they were at some time in the past. What we like is not the Bible on what is and is not good professional wrestling. Your background, your experience, or your education in the industry in no way changes what wrestling is. Now, someone let Jim Cornette know that. So now you tell me why you disagree with me. Also, let me know at what point you think TNA Impact was at its peak if you do not agree that it is currently at its peak. If you appreciate this discussion, the discussion this has created, whether you agree with our position or not, we'd love if you could like the video and share the video with others. We want to hear from all of you and all of your perspectives. So with that said, we are now got a little bit less to talk about. We're going to move on to my favorite moments from the week. I always forget to turn off that one graphic each week. That's better. There we go. So this week, I didn't load in the graphic, so actually let's turn that back on. Our first one is going to be Impact Rebellion. We're going to go over some of my favorite things that I wrote, some of the things I thought were quirky, interesting, whatever, that I wrote out while watching the shows this week as part of the sound off. With Rebellion, I really liked the opening of the pay-per-view, much better than anything that had a poppy soundtrack. I don't mean pop music, I mean the band Poppy. Some people get confused over that, and I understand why. Crazy spot with Alexander stopping Austin from suplexing TJP and ends up hitting a side Russian leg sweep on Ace and suplex on TJP off of the turnbuckles. Great match. Great match. Morrissey comes in and takes out everyone after Storm begs for him to tag in. He's looking good right now. Morrissey looked real good there. What the heck was Matt Cardona wearing? Was this a Turtles-inspired or something gear? Can we call Grace and Ellering power and power? With the amount of power they are both showing off? Like, I just think that'd be a great name. Just saying. Just throwing it out there. Trey appears from behind Sammy to hit a running ace cutter off the apron through a table on the outside. That was the finish of the match. Great. Great move. So what is Doc Gallows wearing tonight? Are they up in their 80s teen comedy jock stereotype? It was great to see Tenille not doing her usual posing at the beginning of the match, as it was a great way to show how important the match was for her. So how great was it to hear Mauro calling pro wrestling once again? He is doing what God put him on this earth to do. Be the best play-by-play person today. What a powerful kick by Omega, sending Swan flying into the corner. It was a great selling from Swan on that one. That's it for Impact Rebellion. So let's move on to NWA Power. Sound on, sound off. Aldis is trying to put Murdoch against Adonis to play the cowardly heel champion, avoiding Murdoch to likely the next pay-per-view. Post-match, in one, Kratos gets in Tim Storm's face at ringside, leading to them face-to-face. Latimer and Adonis then are now coming out to offer the third spot in their six-man tag match that night to Kratos. Boogie is just going off on the intelligence of Jack Dane, who then just gets to the point saying what Dane does in the ring does his talking. I'm actually looking forward to their match next week now. What a little storytelling does, right? Hey, Velvet Sky and Austin Idol. How about we call the match and not argue like little school kids? Also, everything Sky said about Idol is what the fans think of Sky. And wow, did my ears seriously hurt when Melina and Taryn Terrell were talking at the same time. Wrestlers seemed at the end in the main event to just stand around for a minute, waiting for the bell to ring, when it had already rung. The referee actually had to tell them the ring bell had actually already rung. So that's it for Power. It was a super packed Power apparently. So now we move on to NXT. What a sick-looking landing for Dakota Kai on the attempted slapjack by Martinez. It looked like she almost broke her arm on the landing. Martinez did hit a nice Three Amigos double underhook on Dakota Kai, though. At one point, Timothy Thatcher brings up Takeover Cardiff and gets the fans to chant "Shoes off if you hate Zach Gibson," before Ciampa hit Gibson with his shoe. I am really looking forward to this match again. Storm was going for the Storm Zero in her match, but tossed Zeta aside and put her on the top before Zoe Stark comes out to distract Storm. Raymer fights Storm off after the distraction and hits a beautiful shooting star press and actually gets the pinfall victory in shocking fashion. Indy Hartwell just walks straight to the ring, all sad, and doesn't participate in the entrance until forced. She is in total spoiled teenager mode. I love that Gargano asked the refs permission to help Theory before actually helping him up. He wasn't fast enough though, as Reed came around and pounced Theory off the ring apron. Wolf on the outside wouldn't hit Killian Dane during the tag match with the chair even after told by Bartel. Sanity friendship seeking through maybe? Post-match, Wolf takes a step in front of the other two, and they didn't like it and take a step in front of Wolf. There are troubles in Imperium, I do believe. Kushida comes out with his jean jacket, puffy vest, and boots again, in Marty McFly fashion. Maybe they took on the criticism, or if he is only going barefoot for singles title matches, not sure, but they're going back and forth right now. Needs some consistency. Legado del Fantasma stood tall at the end, holding the titles as the show came to a close. And that is NXT, so we'll move on to AEW Dynamite. Brian Cage catches Hangman to avoid the buckshot and hit an F5 before he gets a finisher to get the shocking pinfall victory over Page. Why is Excalibur so shocked by the actions of the Buck if he truly has known them their whole career? This is not the first time they've been heels. So is Brandon Cutler basically the Virgil now to the Young Bucks' DiBiase? So Cassidy started off his match with Penta with his sunglasses on, and Penta doing his Zero Miedo thing every time Orange Cassidy tried to do his pockets bit. There was a great promo from Spears on Sammy, who just responds by not believing him since he is a failure. At least Spears has got rid of that blonde hair. Thank God. Jericho tells MJF that you can't inherit a spot or take it just because you want it, like MJF's trust fund. You want it, you earn it. Great to see that Cassidy is coming out for Statlander's match, selling his match from earlier in a very noticeable way. So QT Marshall retreats to the Nightmare Express bus, but Cody was waiting in the bus. They fight around on the bus until going to the top of it. Aubrey Edwards tries to stop them as Cody put QT in a figure 4 on the top of the bus. Great to see that Sting didn't stand with Darby during the entrance of Darby in the main event and just went to his spot at ringside. It's great to see that as the spotlight should be on the guy fighting, and have Sting used to help increase the spotlight. So that is what they did there, and it was really good. Alright, finally we are going to move on to NXT UK. Is Tailman taking over the gatekeeper role for Jack Stars? He's looking to do the job against Raja in this one, who was debuting. But I was wrong, because Tailman actually wins by referee stoppage after snapping the shoulder or arm or whatever it was of Rohan Raja with some nasty sounding sound effects. I thought I was going to puke for a second. Really did. Ilya Dragunov was about to be interviewed earlier in the day when Dave Mastiff comes in to offer to beat the tempers out of each other. Ilya accepts. Referee is unable to see Samuels rake the eyes of Muir, who had Samuels up in the torture rack, which leads to a spinebuster for Samuels to get the pinfall victory. We see Trent Seven arrive at the PC earlier this week, and he talks about inspiring other people. Sam Gradwell takes offense to Trent being a role model and founding father when they signed the same day. It was great ways to show how smart Meiko Satomura is by being able to fight off Aphie Valkyrie's attempts to break the armhole. Also, great selling from Aphie during the knee bar leg lock from Meiko Satomura. Eddie Dennis looked to start off against Joe Coffey in the main event, but tagged in Primate in typical heel fashion. Is innovative and creative offense a wrestling announcer's way of saying, I don't know the name of that move? So Gala celebrated after Joe Coffey was helped to his feet by the other boys after the battle to end the show. With that, we move on to the final show of the week, Impact Wrestling. So the real Impact Wrestling, Don Callis came out of the office after everyone else had left, and Scott tells Don that Kenny can't zoom in and has to be there in person as per the contract from Rebellion. If he is not, he will be stripped of the title and suspended from both companies. Good twist. Great way to show that this is why we're forcing him to be there. Chris Bay makes his return to be the opponent for Jake Something in full HBK homage gear. Taylor is having none of it, but Tenille and Caleb are so delusional they think that they are now a team with Taylor Wilde. Powerbomb from Morrissey and is quickly over in a full squash match over Sam Beal. Havoc walked in and went face to face with Deanna and then just walked off without saying anything. Nice to hear what Matt Striker it was nice to hear Matt Striker talk about his history training with Taylor when she was in developmental as Chantel Taylor in WWE. Moose walked in upset that he has to qualify, with Scott D'Amore agreeing with Moose being good enough, and that is why it should be easy for him to qualify. A weird looking spot with Ace Austin hitting a move onto the knees of Alexander. It didn't look like that was meant to happen. It looked like it was meant to actually be a regular splash, but way off. So Cardona hits the sky high on Brian Myers to the delight of D'Lo Brown on commentary, but only got a 2 count. Will you ever argue when you know you're going to get an Eddie Edwards and Sami Callihan match? Like, you know it's going to be good. Except when, what happened at the end, but it's all good. Don Callis gets the microphone at the end to talk about the beatdown that they just did on the two competitors. They say this is what happens when you demand Omega shows up. With that said, that's all for the Sound On Sound Off this week. let's go on to some poll results. So, our poll results this week, we asked you, is it Britt Baker's time to become the AEW Women's World Champion? With it obvious, her and Cheetah are headed for that title match. Your options were yes, not yet, never, and long overdue. We got 47.5% of you saying yes, 20% saying not yet, 18.75% saying never, and long overdue got 13.75%. You still got all week to vote on that. We'll update you next week on possible spoilers ahead with how many more votes we got to see if there was any change. And then with that, we are on to our new people's favorite segment, the our 5 favorite matches of the past 7 days. Now, this week we have NXT UK, AEW Dynamite, and Impact Wrestling represented. We're going to start off with a little bit of a drum roll, anticipation. 5 from NXT UK, Aoife Valkyrie and Meiko Satomura. They told a great story in that ring. They built on that story of Aoife Valkyrie's undefeated streak that she hadn't beat. It was a really good sign of respect from both competitors, and they just had a really good, hard-fought match where both came out looking strong. Even Valkyrie's streak ending, she still looked strong. That number 4. This is going to piss off a lot of people, and people are going to disagree. Orange Cassidy versus Pentagon from AEW Dynamite. Yes, that was a great match, and the best match on AEW Dynamite this week. The whole Cassidy not bowing down to the intimidation of Pentagon that he always tried to get on people, while also Cassidy doing his own mind games, actually working to get under the skin of Pentagon. He ends up getting the win because of it. For those that think it's just a goofy comedy gimmick, watch the match without thinking that, and you will see the psychology of the Orange Cassidy character, where he is putting, just getting into his opponent's brains to just get so pissed off that he is not trying. And that's enough so that he can hit the actual moves later and get the win. That brings us to number 3. Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann from Impact Rebellion. The next 3 matches will all be from Impact Rebellion. They killed it. Here we go. That's right. The main event is the number 3 match from the week, where Kenny Omega became the Impact and AEW World Champion. He is the belt collector. He is collecting the belt. If you didn't think he was going to come out of that match with the belts, if you somehow thought Rich Swann was going to be the Impact World Champion after this without a screwy finish, you're kidding yourself. I was glad that they didn't have a screwy finish, and we actually had a clear win. Kenny Omega does deserve to beat Rich Swann. I don't care what anyone says. Rich Swann didn't deserve to win that match, okay? No one's going to watch Impact the next week after Rich Swann beats Kenny Omega. They watch, well, maybe not because of, the other things that were on TV. We'll see how it continues. That said, number 2, Trey versus Sammy. Last man standing match at Rebellion. Yes, this match I was expecting nothing from. I thought it was going to be terrible. I hated the promo from Trey leading up to this from the previous week's Impact. There was so much I was not looking forward to, and they just sold me so much on this. It almost became number 1, but it couldn't, because number 1, Josh Alexander, TJP, Ace Austin, triple threat X Division title match from Rebellion. What a triple threat match. So good. So good. Loved it. Great. Can't say enough good things about it. What else can you say? Alexander got the match. It was fast paced. So many great offensive moves on it. They were just going full speed ahead. They did do some of your typical 2 in the ring while the other guy gets the rest, but it wasn't as obvious as it is in a lot of triple threat matches in some companies. And you just gotta love it. It was so good. I'm gonna say it one more time. It was so good. And that is our 5 matches of the week. Let us know in the comments below what were your 5 favorite matches from that past week. If you can, be sure to share and let us like if you like this video and agree with our 5 matches. With that said, we're going to move on to He Said, She Said, You Said. We got your comments from Rebellion. So, Sean B. in the Everything Pro Wrestling group gave his thoughts on the pay-per-view by stating, I really love this pay-per-view. First Impact pay-per-view I've watched since Aces and Eights were around. That triple threat match was en fuego. I'm not very good at Spanish, sorry. What a way to open the show. It really is true that the opening match sets the tone for the rest of the night. W. Morrissey was impressive, unlike his name in Impact. Horrible name, it's his real name. Last Man Standing was amazing. Just shocked at the outcome of the winner. And my bigger shot was actually Mauro Ranallo carrying both Stryker and D'Lo Brown on commentary during the main event. He sounds like he didn't miss a beat at all. I agree. Mauro Ranallo is reason enough just to watch that if you're a fan of him. If you don't, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Thomas D. on our main post also gave us thoughts on the pay-per-view, saying, great pay-per-view. All the matches were done well and great performance by all. Omega vs. Swan was a 5-star match in my opinion. It didn't have the outcome I'd hoped, but it was damn exciting. I disagree on that. I don't think it was 5-star. There was 2 botches in the match. That's what kept it from being higher up on my list. They did an okay job of trying to hide the fact that it was not a botch, or trying to hide the fact that it was a botch, sorry. But they couldn't get over it. It was a botch. It was a botch. But, like I said, great match. It was still made the top 5. And there was some competition this week, so it was good. Okay, so let's move on to your comments from NWA Power. Ted C. in the World of Wrestling group gave us his quick thoughts on Power overall, saying, I love how NWA has that throwback setting, ring and backstage, whatever you call it, backdrop, I guess would be a better saying for it. I agree, Ted. It was great. I really enjoy it. It's really good. I feel that makes them set apart. It's what we were saying in our Something to Talk About earlier, that Impact does something different. NWA does something different. It's okay to be different and not be number one, because different is not for everybody. But it doesn't mean you're not successful. And NWA is very successful at what they do. Alright, sound off regular Jamie T in the NWA Power Hour group, it might have a different name next week, but I won't call it the new name, gave his thoughts on the show by stating, I thought it was a good episode. Taryn Terrell's bitchy, sassy promo work was surprisingly good. I really enjoyed it. The worst moment of the show was Danny Deals making any kind of appearance. Austin Idol and Velvet Sky bickering on commentary during the TV title match was the closest to good commentary from Velvet so far. The big 6-man at main event was a very good match, but as good as a television taping 6-man with slightly random teams could be expected to be. Overall, a good show that usefully developed several of the main storyline and makes me want to tune in next week. All great points by Jamie. It's true. They did push the storylines. I wouldn't agree so much that it was good commentary from Velvet Sky, but you know, what can we do? What can we do? So, we'll move on from there to NXT. Your comments from NXT this week. We had Jamie G in the Pro Wrestling Discussion Group agreed that the show was missing a little something by saying, overall, there wasn't any good matches, and it felt more like a setup story more than good in-ring action. Darren A in the NXT UK NXT 205 Live Worlds Collide group gave his thoughts on Imperium, as well as his upcoming women's title match, the upcoming women's title match. I don't know if Darren actually has an upcoming women's title match, but good luck if you do. Stating, I got a gut feeling that there will be new additions that Imperium is asking for. Originally they wanted Timothy Thatcher to join, but I guess that idea fell apart now that Ciampa is reunited with him. I'd be surprised if Dane does join Imperium, even though it won't be the first time I saw him as a heel per se. Plus, I guess you can say it's also half of Sanity reunion with Alexander Wolf. 2 weeks from now, I'm definitely checking out the matchup between Raquel Gonzalez and Mercedes Martinez. It looks like it's going to be one intense battle between the two, and we've seen them in tough battles before, especially those with Rhea Ripley. Very good points. I don't think we're going to see Dane in Imperium, as I'm more likely to see Wolf leave or kicked out of Imperium. So we'll see how that one fares, so to speak. Okay, so now your comments from Dynamite. So we got your Dynamite comments. Sound off regular Porfirio C in the AEW Alternate Elite Wrestling gave his thoughts on the main event of the night by saying, the main event didn't feel like a main event. It was, however, a good setup. I really do think the real main event was Cage vs. Hangman, and though it wasn't supposed to be an upset, it sure felt like it. Fair points. I agree that maybe 10 is probably not main event material, but they're doing it because they just want the TNT title to be the main event, right? So I get it. I think that it makes the TNT title feel like it's the main event, so others want to fight for it, so that it basically is a way to get into the main event of Dynamite, but I get what you're saying. Andre T in the Minutes to Bell-Time group gave his rundown of the thoughts on the show, stating, I'm ready for Britt to have the belt. She's played the part so well and deserves it. Her promos have me cracking up. The Factory is a bunch of second-tier guys trying to move up to the main event status. Not happening, but needs time to grow. Inner Circle is going to win in the most brutal way possible. Don't know which way, but it will be brutal. Sammy will pin Shawn. You gotta remember, I could be wrong, but from what they said, submission or surrender. So I don't actually think you can get a pinfall win in this match. But don't quote me on that. That's just what I remember them saying on Dynamite, that it's submission or surrender for victory. We'll see though, because we're 3 days away. Alright, so we got one more show with your comments this week, and that show is NXT UK. Darren A once again had some great comments. He's our big NXT guy. And the same, catch my breath here first. In the NXT UK NXT 205 Live Worlds Collide group, let us know their thoughts on the Gauntlet and their Loser Leaves Town matches coming, stating, my prediction for winning the women's Gauntlet would have to be Amelia McKenzie. I've seen her do very well in Progress, as have I, and looking forward to seeing her give Kaylee Ray a run for her money. I can definitely see her winning gold on NXT UK. I wonder if Kenny Williams will be heading to another brand, such as heading to the US for NXT and/or 205 Live. I can see Amir Jordan winning, kicking Kenny out of NXT UK. Otherwise, I might see him in another brand that's affiliated with WWE, such as ICW, where he also competed back then. Possible, all very possible. Or as I mentioned in the comments to Darren, I also think a mask could come into play. Very possible. So we'll see. I am very interested to see where they go with that. All right. So with that said, we're almost done for the day. I was planning on having something completely awesome for you guys to see this week, but it didn't arrive. I did see an update that it is getting close. So I'm hoping to have an unboxing of one of my Holy Grail figures next week. I'm going to leave it at that. I haven't even told my friends what the figure is. I did get some great figures in this week for the Fig Heads. I did get a Ricky Steamboat, the NXT TakeOver Flashback with the great Intercontinental title with it. I'm a big belt nerd for those figures. I did get the Ultimate Macho Man Randy Savage. Oh yeah! And the Edge Ultimate as well. I have a few more on the way. I have the Walt to Ringside exclusive coming. I have a TJP, the one with the medal and the Cruiserweight title coming. It's an Elite. I already have a basic of him. I have a Elite Samoa Joe coming. I've pre-ordered that kick-ass looking. I've never ordered a basic online before, but I had to do it because it's the Triple H in a suit. Looks great. That said, we'll go more into all of it next week. I'll show a lot of off and maybe have an unboxing at the end of the podcast. Until next time, though, watch out for those spoilers. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.